Hi, my name is Damien and I'd like to show you our Matrix console. The Matrix was designed for the project studio that needed the best of the analog world and also the digital combined in one unit. With the Matrix we have a real super analog SSL console minus the mic pre's, EQs and dynamics. The reason why we did this is because we found a lot of producers and studios already own a lot of outboard, so why double up? The idea of the Matrix is you can bring everything together in the one unit, control it with some clever software and do some interesting things that I'll show you as we go through this demo. At the heart of it is a 16-channel analog console using the same super analog circuitry that you find in the Duality, AWS900 and back to the old 9K console. Every channel can have 2 inputs, so we can actually have effectively 32 inputs on mix down. Starting from the top we have our main analog line level gain, we have an insert button, an invert, then we have a direct out level. Now every channel has a direct out which we can feed to converters when we're tracking and recording. But it's actually nice to be able to control this gain or just to back a little bit off. This can be set to either pre or post fader. Then we move to our stereo cue section. So this is where we can create headphone mixes when we're recording, and we have level and pan control. But also we can feed an input into this section. So this is how we get 32 on mix down. All of these inputs get fed to the stereo mix bus and this can be put into the main mix. So we can have 16 plus 16 together for the 32. Then we have our auxiliary sends section and we have 4 of these and these are switchable between 1 and 3, 2 or 4. So effectively you use 2 at the same time. Then we have our analog pan. On every channel there is an insert as I mentioned earlier, but these are floating. Typically on an analog console we expect insert 1 to stay on channel 1, insert 2 on channel 2 and so forth. But on the Matrix they're floating. What this allows us to do is to incorporate all our outboard, attach it to the console, but be able to move it around via Java software. So as opposed to the old days of with the patch bay, physically patching in stuff and then writing down recall sheets later on, we can do this within the Matrix. So here's the browser. So this is the Insert Matrix tab. On the right hand side I have all my analog devices connected. So at the moment we have the X-Rack talking to the Matrix. And what I can do is can go to any of my 16 channels, click on the drop menu and then I'm faced with a selection of either devices or chains. If I go to devices I can see all the single units that are attached to the console and by just pressing I'm now inserting a compressor into channel 1. Go to channel 2 and I can do the same thing but now add an EQ. What's clever is we can also create chains of outboard. So say in a particular recording session we want to link both an EQ and dynamics together, we can go to chains, go to new, and if I call this bass 1, now it opens up the dialog down here and I have a choice of adding 6 devices in the chain. So I click on the first one, go into dynamics, second one into an EQ, press save. Now I'm already using these on these channels, so I'm going to clear everything. So if I go to bass, now go to my chains option, I now have bass 1, which I can then add, and it processes everything for me. Now when I store my project, all these settings are remembered, as well as total recall. Total recall is an SSL trademark and it's a way of being able to snapshot all the positions of the faders and the pots within one file. So if I just enable total recall, we can see that on the console itself there are a few lights. Now when it's red it means that this dial is too far to the right. So all I have to do is turn it, now it's gone green, saying I've gone too far to the left. So the idea is to get the light to go out. Once this is done, the channel is in the right position. Now the X-Rack in the background is also flashing. Now we have this connected via total recall serial cable to the Matrix. And again, I can store all the settings of my modules from the X-Rack with the settings of the Matrix. So here we see in this module it's flashing and this dial is red, so I've got to turn it to the left until it goes out. Once this is done, this is stopped flashing saying this module is now OK. Within the Java remote application we have a projects tab. Now there's an SD card at the back of the console where we store all our profiles, all our projects. We can have some notes for each project, so whether it be a name, artist name, record company information, it's all there. We have a nice track sheet button as well. So if you do want to print it out and store it, you can. We have the Total Recall tab, and here we can store multiple Total Recall snapshots for the same project. So maybe we have our main mix, then we do a vocal up, we do an instrumental, and we can snapshot all of these. Channels is a way of naming your analog channels. So no need to get a long piece of tape, pull it across the console, and then store this on a wall for months on end. Everything again is stored within the project. Then we have the Insert Matrix tab, which I mentioned, and then the last one is the door, which I'll come to later. Back to the analog side of the console. We have main monitor section, so we have two speakers, main and minis, dim, cut. We have a talkback section, and then various options on the main monitor. So whether we want to listen to the mix bus, our secondary bus called the record bus, the stereo cue, our digital input. The Matrix comes with a digital converter, so we can take our analog mix, come out digitally on ASEBU or optical SPDIF, or we can monitor a digital source coming back into the console. We also have two external inputs, so either one on the iJack, so you can plug in an iPhone or an iPod, or a secondary, whether it be a DAT machine or another external device. This section here is our master channel strip, and this allows us to do all the routing for our analog channels. So I can select a single channel, and I can assign it to the mix bus, turn it on and off, or the record bus. On the meter bridge here, it's telling me which channels are being routed to which channels. I can switch on effects 1 or 3, 2 or 4. By pressing the pots, I'm activating the auxiliary sends. I have various options for the stereo cue as well, so if I put it to input, let's put it all on all channels. If I set this to input, now whatever I'm feeding into the line input is going to be fed here. So whether it be more outputs from my converter or some keyboards, I would have my 16 here and the 16 down here as well. We also have a clever function called auto monitor. So if we have 16 mic inputs, so by pressing this, this is my main input switch. When it's green, it's the line input or mic input. So the console knows that I've got some input coming into the console. Turn on the auto monitor and door monitor, and these lights flash up. When I press play, they turn green. So what this is doing is going to switch to my playback. When I press record, the lights change and give me my line input coming in. So I can do zero latency monitoring off the console, which is very handy. Moving back over to this part of the console, we have the artist monitor section. So here we can select what we're going to route to the artist headphones, whether it be the stereo cue, the main mix bus. We also have a nice 2-band EQ for the headphones as well. Many singers always complain that the mix isn't bright enough, so very easily, without doing too many changes here, we can just dial in a bit of top end. Headphone section here, so we can either listen from our own headphone input or output here, the main mix, or we can listen to what we're sending to the artist. So we can actually set up a headphone mix right from here without having to do too much changing. Our main auxiliary sends here, and then we've got 4 stereo returns. Now obviously these can be used for reverbs, delays, but if not, they can still be used as inputs. So with our 32 plus 8, we can have 40 inputs analog on mixdown. On the 3 main stereo buses, the mix, record and stereo cue, we have an insert. So typically on the main mix bus, you would have an insert like a bus compressor that your whole mix is going to run through. The record bus can be very useful for doing things like parallel compression. So say I've got 8 channels of drums. These are going to my mix bus, but I can also route them to the record bus at the same time. With the insert point, I can add a compressor and then put this back into the mix. So now I can blend this wet signal underneath the dry for that New York compression technique. This button here is telling me that I'm in my analog mode. By pressing it, it now flips the console to controller. Now the Matrix is a 4-door controller unit, so we can control anything that's HUI or MCU. So whether it be Logic, Nuendo, Digital Performer, Reason, Ableton Live, Final Cut, Pro Tools, we're very happy to work with all applications, and we can work with multiple at the same time. So how do we set up Matrix with our computer? Well, in Logic we will go to File, Logic, Preferences, and go to Control Surfaces, and go to the Setup option. Here we're faced with a blank window, and what I want to do is go to New and then Install. Here I can add Mackie control, close the window, and I need to assign the right port to this. So we're on our first layer of the matrix. So this is going to be port 1. And now I want to add the extender. So again, New, Install, go to Extender, Add. And this is going to be 2. And there we have it, nice and easy. Now the matrix is talking directly with Logic, and here we have all our faders and all our control. So at the moment my layer 1 is talking to Logic. If I press layer 2, this is now talking to Reason, which is working in the background in Rewire. So if I just open up the window, we can see by changing these faders, I'm controlling the mixer inside Reason. Press it, go back to Logic, and here I'm controlling all my levels. So obviously I want to be able to do my levels, my pans, which I can do directly from here, but we can go a lot further with the DAW control. For example, if I want to change some sends or add some sends to my tracks, I have a send button, which I can press and choose destination. Now here I can see all my tracks inside the mixer, and by turning the VPOT I get a list of all the buses available. So by clicking, you can see here that I'm creating various buses to the tracks. I can go down a level and create some more. By skipping a page with the arrow key, I can now control the levels directly. This is very nice if on a vocal passage in the chorus we want to add some more reverb. Well, we can just automate it by flipping the controls to the fader, put the channel in automation mode, and as I reach that vocal pass, I can just increase or back away. If I want to add an EQ, I have an EQ button. If I choose, let's say, horns, EQ, channel strip, it now opens up the equalization window, and all the parameters are available on the soft keys. So here I can change frequency and gain, and again flip to the faders. So I can get some very smooth transition when automating. When it comes to plugin, it works pretty much in the same way. Press plugin, and I can see all my tracks and what plugins are applied or not in this case. So I go up to my top level, I can see there's a SSL channel strip. And again, by turning the VPOT, I can add any audio units, VST plugin in my DAW. So by pressing a VPOT, I already have a channel strip on this channel. All the parameters are spread across, and again, I can control all the parameters. Now with this channel strip, there's more than 16 functions, so I just use the cursor key to scroll through the various pages to get to the function that I want to use. Controlling virtual instruments is very nice and works in the same way. So by pressing instruments, I can see that there's a blank instrument channel that doesn't have anything on it. So by turning the dial, I get a list of all the plugins, open up the organ, and again, all the parameters are spread across. So I can use one hand for playing. By flipping the actions to the faders, I can change the drawbars and actually be quite creative with the sound. And this can be very useful as well for synths, whether we're changing the cutoff, resonance. Having it on the faders and having a hand free to play at the same time allows us to be very creative. Now this section here is called the soft keys, and here we can program all types of shortcuts. As I said at the very beginning, we have a USB keyboard emulator built into the matrix, and this allows us to program things like cut, copy, paste, or other functions that our DAW supports. With Logic, there's a whole list internally, and you can scroll through, find the ones you like, assign the key command, and then apply it to the matrix. So the last tab in the matrix remote is DAW, and this is where we set up our profile. So currently DAW 1, I have my Logic template, and DAW 2, I have another layer which is talking to Reason. Down here at the bottom are all my soft keys, and this is where I can program the shortcuts. Now each top button can be a sub-menu of up to 8 functions. So if I show sub-keys here and pressing a button, we can see there's various functions. Here's my edit, arrange. Now if we want to apply a shortcut, these ones are empty here. So if I go to key assign, DAW commands shows me all the MCU functions, or I can program a USB keyboard shortcut. If I go to learn and press say Shift M, I can now give this a name, mute, just for example, and press save. We can now see that on the matrix it's been updated, and when I press this it does Shift M. So what I've done is I've programmed a bunch of functions that I use in Logic for myself. So if we go up a page, so what I can do with my edit menu, I can select all. I can use my jog wheel to move to a point in the song that I want to cut. I can then highlight this one section, copy it, paste, all without a mouse or keyboard. The whole idea of the matrix is to have everything within the hand's reach and only resort to the mouse, especially when you're kind of doing comping with vocals or really fine, tricky editing. Now that I've cut this position, I can move it with the nudge tool. So if I press nudge with the V-pot, I can change the position. I can also do things like loop. I can turn to real copies. So a lot of quick things that I would normally do with my keyboard, just within a button's reach. As well, I can do other door commands. I can create markers. So by pressing the marker, again, I've got various functions. So I can create a marker point here and there and move about very quickly. The last thing the matrix can do is analog fader automation. Now, what we do typically with an SSL console, there would be a computer built inside to do all of this. But we're actually going to use our DAW. We create 16 MIDI tracks, assign it to the correct port that talks to the matrix, and each of these 16 MIDI tracks talks to an analog fader. So all we have to do is draw our volume changes up and down to affect the analog channel. Nice and easy. So moving between the analog and digital domain is very easy. Now, one thing that's very nice with the matrix is the master fader, the analog fader, can actually be put in what's called focus mode. By putting it in this mode, this now becomes a one-channel DAW controller. If I open up the mixer, we can see here that this is controlling Logic, but all of these are still analog. And it works the other way around too. So just so you can see, if I bring down all the analog faders, move to DAW layer, this is now one channel analog fader. So if I select number 1 and number 10, we can see if I flip to the analog world, these two channels have moved. So no matter where I am, I have control of both worlds very easily. If you wish to monitor in surround, the matrix comes with an optional card which you can fit in, which will increase the external inputs and also the monitor outputs as well for 5.1. You have full control in the SSL menu of the monitor section, so you can solo, left, center, right, left surround, right surround, sub, solo, any or multiple of these together. On the back of the console, everything is very tidy. You'll find most connections on D-sub. It's only the mini outputs which are on XLRs and the digital ASEBU and SPDIF, where you have either the optical or again XLR connections. You have foot switches, so you can do punch in, punch out, should you wish. The SD card slot, and also Ethernet and USB connection. So this is for the controller side. The USB cable is for all the USB keyboard shortcuts that we program on the matrix. There's still some other functions down here for controlling. We have our arrows and mode key. If I press the mode, the arrow cursor keys now become zoom, so I can go up and down. If I go to single track view and I close this, I can now move up and down my tracks very quickly, or single parts as well. Really, the matrix is something you need to sit down in front of and have a run through. So go to our website, go to the D locator and find your local distributor and ask for a demo. Thank you very much. Goodbye.